What if a thief actually had rules, robbing only the rich while never touching ordinary families? And if that's the case, can someone like that really be called the same kind of criminal as everyone else? To answer that, we have to start with the two men standing in front of us, Sean and Derek. On the surface, they worked as valets at an upscale restaurant, but behind the polished uniforms and fake smiles, the job was really just cover for their burglary scheme. Their method was simple and discreet. First, they targeted customers based on the value of their luxury cars. Then they judged whether the house would be empty by counting how many people got out of the vehicle. Like the couple stepping out right now with 2 kids, a perfect family of 4, which usually meant there was a good chance nobody else was home, making the rest much easier. Using valet service as an excuse, the 2 could legally drive off with the customer's car without raising suspicion. Then, by checking receipts and other clues left inside the vehicle, they could quickly pinpoint the owner's home address. The pair had a clear division of labor, with one staying behind to keep watch, while the other headed to the target's house, putting on gloves and shoe covers before stealing jewelry, watches, and other valuables that were easy to sell and hard to trace. Deep down, they comforted themselves with the idea that they were stealing from the rich. To them, this life beat wasting away at some boring dead-end job while barely getting by. They even convinced themselves their actions made sense, believing the wealthy already had more than enough and they were only taking things those people would never miss. But that lie they kept telling themselves completely shattered one night. That evening, a limited edition Maserati pulled up outside the restaurant. The owner stepped out in a perfectly tailored suit, talking business the entire time, radiating the arrogance and superiority of high society with every move. To Sean and Derek, he looked like the perfect target, though this particular fat sheep clearly looked down on people like them. Seeing that smug attitude, the 2 exchanged glances instantly. If not him, then who? Without another word, they split up and got to work. Sean drove off in the Maserati, using the navigation history on the center console to track down the man's address. Meanwhile, Derek stayed at the restaurant, keeping an eye on the wealthy customer's every move. The moment Sean used the garage remote from the storage compartment to open the gates of the massive hilltop mansion, he could barely contain his excitement. The huge house didn't even appear to have security cameras, and from the look of things, the owner seemed to live alone, with not another soul visible anywhere inside the enormous mansion. Either way, it made Sean's job much easier. Sean wasn't new to this. He knew wealthy homeowners often left unopened mail near the entrance, and sometimes those envelopes contained newly delivered credit cards from the bank. Sure enough, it didn't take long before he found exactly what he was looking for inside one unopened envelope. The card was solid black, the kind that practically screamed unlimited spending power, so Sean immediately called Derek to share the good news. But even if the 2 had small ambitions, activating the card still required the homeowner's phone number. Seeing that the rich man was still eating at the restaurant, Derek quickly told Sean to search the house for a phone. Thankfully, the effort paid off. There wasn't one downstairs, but Sean eventually found a telephone sitting on the nightstand inside the master bedroom upstairs. Without hesitation, he leaned against the bed and called the bank, successfully activating the card by following the automated prompts. What neither of them realized was that the mansion only looked unprotected on the surface. In reality, something far darker was hidden inside. Just as Sean was about to leave, a locked room suddenly caught his attention. He assumed it was filled with expensive collectibles or luxury goods, but the second he pushed the door open, he froze. Inside the room sat only a computer. The only valuable thing nearby seemed to be a blank check tossed carelessly beside it. But since there was only one, taking it would immediately alert the owner. After a quick discussion, the 2 decided to photograph the account details and try transferring money online later. And right then, everything took a horrifying turn. Pay attention, because things are about to get intense.
Jesus fucking Christ! Whoa!
In the dark room, a young woman sat tied to a chair with her hands bound behind her back, her mouth sealed shut with tape, bruises covering her face and terror filling her eyes. Her body was covered in cuts and bruises, making it obvious she had been abused by the wealthy man for a very long time. The sight left Sean completely stunned, and in an instant, all the excitement of the robbery disappeared, replaced by shock and fear. Every instinct told him he needed to help her escape, but the worst part was that the rich man had already finished dinner and was preparing to head home. Luckily, another couple was still ahead of him waiting for valet service. Derek didn't dare waste a second, quickly warning Sean about the situation while driving and telling him to forget the woman and get out immediately. Thankfully, Sean still had a conscience, and before leaving, he decided he had to free the girl. But to break the chains locking her to the chair, he needed to grab bolt cutters from the garage. Right before leaving the room, the woman warned Sean to put everything back exactly where it had been, because a hidden camera was installed in the upper corner of the room, and whenever the owner wasn't home, he regularly checked the camera feed remotely. Almost the moment she finished speaking, the rich man activated the cameras from his phone. At the same time, after grabbing the tools, Sean noticed another room he hadn't explored yet out of the corner of his eye. Curious, he slowly pushed the door open, only to nearly stop breathing from what he saw. The entire room was filled with torture devices, while the air carried the heavy smell of blood, making it obvious this was where the rich man tortured and disposed of his victims. At that exact moment, the wealthy man was also watching everything through the cameras on his phone. When Sean returned and noticed the lights inside the room had turned on, he instantly froze in place, every rational thought screaming at him to leave immediately. Otherwise, not only would he walk away empty-handed, he might lose his life too. Caught between fear and conscience, Sean ultimately chose to run. Sean sprinted all the way back to the restaurant and, before the rich man reclaimed his car, quickly hid the bolt cutters beneath the passenger seat without being noticed. But the nightmare was far from over. After escaping, Sean found himself trapped in an impossible situation. If he called the police, his own identity as a thief would be exposed. But if he stayed silent, the girl would continue suffering and might even end up murdered by the wealthy psychopath. After talking it over, the two decided to make an anonymous report using a public phone. That way, they could save the girl without exposing themselves. After briefly explaining the situation, Sean drove back near the mansion and quietly watched the police response from a distance. But reality turned out to be even crueler than he expected. When the rich man returned home, he didn't immediately notice anything wrong in the hidden room, but the wrinkled bedsheets in the bedroom tipped him off that someone had broken into the house. Then, after checking the phone records, his suspicions were completely confirmed. Realizing the danger, the rich man quickly moved the girl somewhere else. Then, still wearing pajamas, he calmly welcomed the police into his home, speaking politely and answering every question with perfect composure. At the same time, he had already paid an actress to pose as his wife. With a completely natural performance, she denied any kidnapping and claimed someone must have made a fake emergency call as a prank. Her acting was flawless. Combined with the rich man's social status and powerful connections, the police barely searched the house before dismissing the entire situation as a hoax and leaving the scene. Hidden in the shadows, Sean and Derek felt both furious and helpless. For the first time, they realized they weren't dealing with an ordinary criminal. They were up against a monster who could manipulate the rules however he wanted while hiding behind wealth and respectability. Unwilling to let him continue hurting people, Sean and Derek decided to break into the mansion again and rescue the girl themselves. That night, they waited outside the property. After the rich man left to drop off the actress, they quietly slipped into the backyard and climbed through an unlocked window. At first, everything went surprisingly smoothly, almost too smoothly. The entire house was silent. Even the keypad lock on the room where the girl had been imprisoned earlier had mysteriously disappeared. But the moment they pushed the door open, both men froze in shock. The horrifying prison-like room was gone. In its place was a clean and perfectly normal office. The bloodstains, chains, and signs of torture had all vanished, and the girl was nowhere to be found. It was obviously a trap. The rich man had already predicted they would come back and had secretly moved the girl long before they arrived. By the time Sean and Derek realized something was wrong, police cars had already surrounded the house. Luckily, before officers entered the mansion, the two escaped through the back door and hid in the woods behind the property, barely managing to get away. After that incident, Derek completely broke down and screamed that he wanted out. But Sean refused to give up on saving the girl, and after a fierce argument, the two parted ways on bad terms. Soon after, the rich man drove the girl to an old family property hidden deep in the countryside, where he began a new round of imprisonment while also preparing revenge against Sean and Derek. Meanwhile, Sean took the girl's photo to the police station and tried reporting the case again, but unfortunately, he had neither solid evidence nor any additional leads. A single photo wasn't enough for the police to convict a wealthy man with a clean record, especially when Sean himself had dozens of prior offenses: evading police checks, reckless driving, vandalism. Sean's record was so bad that officers assumed he was simply making false accusations out of spite. Sean realized that if he wanted to take the rich man down, he needed real evidence, so he began secretly watching the mansion around the clock. But the rich man wasn't stupid either. He already knew what Sean and Derek looked like, and he had also noticed the old work vans parked around the wealthy neighborhood that clearly didn't belong there. His revenge came fast and brutal. Using his money and connections, he first obtained several tiny GPS trackers. Then, while Sean stepped away to use the bathroom, the rich man secretly attached one beneath his vehicle. Afterward, he used his influence to dig up every detail about Sean's life, including his home address, family members, friends, and workplace. But instead of killing Sean immediately, the rich man chose something crueler. He wanted to destroy him psychologically. While Sean was showering, the rich man secretly broke into his home and installed spyware on his computer, stealing everything stored inside. Then he leaked private photos of Sean's girlfriend online, posting them on college forums and destroying their relationship. At the same time, he contacted Sean's boss at the restaurant and exposed the thefts Sean and Derek had committed together, getting both of them fired and blacklisted from the restaurant industry. The next day, the rich man used his connections again to pressure Sean's parents' employers, fabricating false accusations and blaming them for made-up workplace mistakes, causing both of them to lose their jobs. Overnight, Sean lost his relationship, his career, and the stability of his entire family. The rich man's attacks completely ignited Sean's anger, and he finally stopped fearing threats, becoming determined to take his life back and expose the monster's crimes. After calming down, Sean carefully reviewed every clue he had and suddenly remembered the check he had photographed during the first break-in. After enlarging the image and studying it closely, he noticed a note mentioning Black Pine Cabin, a remote location hidden deep in the mountains. Sean guessed the girl was probably being held there, so he immediately borrowed an old car from a friend and drove toward Black Pine Ridge. After hours of searching through the wilderness, he finally discovered a hidden cabin deep within the dense forest. Parking far away, Sean cautiously approached the cabin and peeked through a crack in the window, where he finally saw the imprisoned girl again. Curled up on the bed in thin clothing, she looked weaker than before, with fresh bruises covering her body and a pale face that made it seem like she hadn't eaten in days. Sean forced himself to stay calm while figuring out how to rescue her, but before he could act, the rich man suddenly appeared behind him and smashed a shovel into his head, knocking him unconscious on the spot. When Sean woke up again, his hands were tightly bound, but the rich man barely even looked at him. Instead, he dragged the girl toward a dirt pit nearby, wearing a cruel smile as he appeared to execute her right in front of Sean. Part of it was meant to completely shatter Sean psychologically, but it was also the rich man showing off, proving that someone like Sean was nothing compared to him. What he didn't realize, however, was that the girl wasn't actually dead. The bullet had only grazed her forehead. While the rich man kept bragging, the girl quietly climbed out of the pit behind him and seized the opportunity to knock him unconscious from behind, successfully rescuing Sean. Just as Sean grabbed the shovel and prepared to deliver the final blow to this monster, the rich man suddenly spun around and fired his gun, blasting the shovel apart. Completely outmatched in weapons, Sean and the girl had no choice but to flee deeper into the forest. While running, they quickly came up with a plan, intentionally leaving footprints behind to lure the rich man into an open area. Then the girl acted as bait to draw his attention while Sean waited for the perfect moment to strike back. Caught completely off guard, the rich man was beaten so badly he couldn't even fight back. At that moment, Sean exploded with terrifying strength, using a wooden stick to unleash every ounce of rage and despair inside him until the rich psychopath finally lost consciousness. By the end of the film, large numbers of police officers arrived at the scene, discovering both Sean and the surviving girl, while also uncovering multiple female bodies buried inside the dirt pit. The rich man's crimes were finally exposed, and waiting for him was a lifetime behind bars. As for Sean, he was sentenced to 1 year in prison for theft, but considering that he risked everything to save the girl and expose the murders, the police ultimately chose to show him understanding and forgiveness.